Good evening, Democrats and friendly unaffiliateds, to this Zoom-based version of the Farrington Democratic Club's monthly meeting. I'm Vicki Shea. I'm the chair of the club, and we have a number of viewers this evening from neighborhood communities in Chatham, in addition to our Farrington and Galloway Ridge members. And we're glad to have you all here. One of our neighbors in the neighboring community is our speaker, Dr. Robbie Cox, who lives in Galloway Ridge. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on our website, which is farringtondems.org. During the evening, you can type your questions into the chat, and I'll read them out at the end of Dr. Cox's talk. Dr. Robbie Cox is a professor emeritus in the curriculum for the environment and ecology within the Department of Communication Studies at UNC Chapel Hill. He has published widely about environment and climate communication, and he was the United Nations official observer at the Climate Summit in Glasgow, Scotland in 2021. He now volunteers as co-chair of the Chatham County Climate Change Advisory Committee, and he will talk to us this evening about climate change and North Carolina.
Okay, hello everyone. I really appreciate your being here after the uh, interesting storm we had lately. It reminded me that actually some years ago, uh, let's see if we can advance this. In 2015, some of you may recall that Senator Jim Imhoff, conservative from Oklahoma, walked into the U.S. Senate with a snowball in his hand during the winter snowstorm that year as his evidence that global warming did not exist, that it was a hoax. I'm sure you've heard some of this over the last weekend. In fact, our president, Mr. Trump himself, went to Truth Social and said record cold wave expected to hit 40 states. Could the environmental insurrectionists please explain whatever happened to warming? So here we are. Actually, scientists, as most of you know, have distinguished between weather, the weekend forecast on the one hand, and climate, which is measured in decades. And really, since the mid 20th century, getting into the 1960s and 70s, scientists have been compiling a pretty comprehensive record that has been sharpened, added to, and is global in the number of institutions that study climate. You must know the series of impacts that are usually discussed, from extreme heat waves, drought, wildfires, hurricanes, climate refugees, health impacts, glacier melts, agricultural failures, and so forth. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on global impacts because these I'm sure you're somewhat familiar with. I simply want to say before I get into North Carolina that we are now experiencing an acceleration of some of the global heating that's going on. In the last 3 years, particularly, there's been a warming spike that has shown a number of records being broken. 2024 was the warmest record globally, on record since data had been collected since, I think, about 1890 or so. In fact, the increase because of the failure of a lot of nations to institute practices based on the targets that they've promised to hit, that we're now expected, or we could meet as much as 2.9 Celsius by the year 2021. By 2050, we could actually break through a 2-degree increase in Celsius, and that starts to enter that range where scientists are saying this would be catastrophic in terms of its impacts on societies, water, food systems, human health, and so forth. North Carolina is not immune to these climate events. So what I'd like to do is review some of the ones from that longer list that seem particularly relevant to our state, from warmer days and nights, droughts and prolonged dryness, more wildfires, stronger hurricanes and flooding, pests and infectious diseases through the vectors that are spreading, property damage, and higher insurance premiums. So let's start with warmer days and nights. This is just illustrates the past year compared to the 1901 to 2000 average of temperature. You can see for almost every month, North Carolina was hotter or warmer than that average computed since the last century. If you look at just Chatham County itself, you see a similar trajectory as to the global increase, 1.3 degrees Fahrenheit, but that's still just a little below what the global warming record is right now. So in that sense, it's not as bad as elsewhere. I will point out, though, that in that midpoint where you see a lower around 1966, that was an anomaly that was really caused by heavy industrial aerosol pollution and a kind of weakened North Carolina, North Atlantic heat transport that had temporarily suppressed the general trend for global warming. The number of warm nights are increasing. In fact, the State Climate Office has been talking recently about this change and suggesting that this may signal a rather significant warming trend in the state. In terms of the effects on human health, we're really being hit by this more than you might think. The Department of Health and Human Services just reported for the summer, this past summer, over 5,700 and more emergency room visits for heat stress. One of the physicians there called this a massive increase compared to the 5-year average in the number of visits to the ER room. We look at droughts and prolonged dryness, we can I think, appreciate the fact that they're becoming more frequent, but they're also lasting longer and they're developing more rapidly, something called flash droughts. And I'll mention that in just a moment. One way to look at this is to look at the current state, North Carolina State Climate Office that's housed in NC State University. It is showing that for early January, all 100 counties were experiencing some degree of drought. At least 32 of those counties were experiencing severe drought. In fact, from the period from 2024 to 2025, North Carolina overall experienced 33 consecutive weeks of drought. That was the sixth longest period of dryness since records began for the state drought map back in 2000. I mentioned flash droughts. I was speaking with the director of the North Carolina State Climate Office the other day, and he said this is something that's starting to worry them a great deal. Flash droughts, he said, are becoming more frequent, and we're anticipating even more of them because it involves a combination of or coming together of high temperatures and lack of rainfall. And that tends to dry out the soil just in weeks, as opposed to what normally happens months it requires sometimes for that kind of drought to set in. Third, we can look at wildfires. This is something globally that is of great concern to scientists around the world as well as policymakers because climate is obviously driving this because of the dryness of soil, the hotter temperatures, the debris that's built up in a lot of these forests. In fact, the North Carolina Forest Service itself said that our state's entering, quote, a more dangerous era for fire risk. In terms of, let me just go back that for a moment and say a couple of things because Helene and the other hurricanes have now left a great deal of debris in the forest that is becoming fuel for this. In fact, it's causing a lot of the wildfires in our state to burn hotter and to spread even faster. And the Forest Service has said that a lot of this debris from Helene is likely to last for a decade or more at least. And of course, we have more hurricanes coming, and that leads to more debris. Something that North Carolina is known for, it leads the nation right now in something called the wildland urban interface. And that's talking about how close we're building homes and placing other facilities to vegetation, to wildlands, to forests. And therefore, those properties are becoming more vulnerable when wildfires do occur. And that leads to greater property damage and such. Fourth, we can talk about stronger hurricanes, but the hurricanes themselves are not necessarily becoming more frequent, but rather the intensity, the strength of them, and the destructiveness that they're leading. So we're dealing with wetter, more inland flooding, stalling, slower moving, and rapid intensification. In fact, of the hurricanes that hit the East Coast, over the last decade or so, 80% of them involved rapid intensification. That means just before they hit landfall, they kind of blow up and become stronger in terms of their rating. The slower, wetter hurricanes obviously lead to more flooding. This is scenes from North Carolina, including one from Chatham County, because often they stall and dump massive amounts of rain. This is something that climate scientists are telling us that we need to develop greater infrastructure. We need to have disaster resilience plans, and it's forcing a lot of local governments, counties, and cities to get on the ball and do a little better job of that planning. There's also the question of property damage and higher insurance premiums as a result of climate change. WUNC reported last year that the North Carolina insurance industry is attributing the rising premiums that we're facing in our state, 15% rise over the last year and this year. They're attributing that not only to inflation, but also to climate change. There's an interesting development in the industry. Zillow, obviously one of the big home properties, home sales properties, they had developed in 2024 a device, a web tool that showed the climate risk for properties that were on the market, being listed on the market. It was very specific in terms of what kind of risks would be expected from climate change. Nevertheless, they got a lot of blowback from a lot of businesses and homeowners. And last year, Zillow removed that tool, so you can no longer find that when you check out a particular property that you might be interested in. Finally, something that I've become acquainted with working with some of the farmers in Chatham County in my position, pests and infectious diseases are becoming a concern of many in the county. In fact, it's a global problem now. Because of increasing warmth, insect vectors basically are moving north in a sense. So in North Carolina, we're on the front of the movement coming out of southern states, Central America, and we're increasingly finding greater numbers and new insects that are bringing new diseases. Let me give you just a quick shot at some of this. This is specific to Chatham County in terms of about 7 particular diseases, the vectors, that is to say, the mosquitoes, ticks, that are carriers of them. And I'll just mention a couple. Some you may not be familiar with, such as La Crosse encephalitis. This is an inflammation of the body, and particularly concerning inflammation of the brain, a very serious incidence. This is somewhat rare nationally, but North Carolina actually has the highest case count of occurrence of this particular disease. And then you have West Nile virus, dengue, Lyme disease, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and others. And you get a sense of the level of risk from high to low moderate to emerging risk. Obviously, what's causing this are some of the factors we've just been talking about. more warm nights, which increase mosquito breeding, longer warm seasons, extending mosquito and tick activity, warmer winters that allows ticks to survive a little more, and increased heavy rainfall that's creating more mosquito habitat. So what's North Carolina doing in terms of climate change, its response? It's actually developed over the last couple of years, particularly since Roy Cooper's governorship. It's developed on the first hand a overall uh, Executive Order 80. It directs all agencies in the state to integrate climate adaptation and resilience planning in all of their policies, programs, and operations. I want to look at just one of the lead agencies, and that's obviously the Department of Environmental Quality. It has just released its comprehensive climate action plan, and it is saying still that it is still on target to meet its goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 50% below 20, I think below 20, I'm not sure what their baseline is on that, but they expect to meet that by 2030. So just within the next 4 years, which is an ambitious target. They're looking across sectors from renewable energy, energy efficiency in buildings, expanding uses of EVs, sequestering carbon more. There are ways to do that even in agriculture. I want to drill down a little more to our county and what we're doing. And this is something I'm more familiar with, working with the county with its advisory committee. Looking back 6 years, by 2017, the county had developed what's called its comprehensive plan, or Plan Chatham. Some of you may have heard of this. And it set forth a rather ambitious goal, and that was to become a carbon negative county. And to be able to certify green buildings, to build more LEED standard buildings, to increase energy and water efficiency in those buildings, and to begin planning for solar panels on buildings. These were aspirational goals, so what's it done since then? This is just a quick list of what's already been done or is in the process of being implemented. Obviously, installing more EV charging stations, not only for county vehicles, but some for general public use. And it's begun to electrify its own fleet from maintenance trucks to the county sheriff to others. We're still working on the school system to get them to transition to EV school buses, but there's been some resistance there. The county's placed solar panels on a number of buildings, particularly its new Agriculture and Conference Center has extensive panels that are fueling a lot of that electricity. It's actually installed geothermal systems or ground source energy for a lot of its new buildings. It already has 4 buildings that have geothermal sources, including Seaford School right there in Pittsburgh. It has already certified a lot of new, not a lot, but some new buildings as LEED certified. It's intending with its new campus as it builds more buildings to the west of Pittsburgh to install geothermal and to have them certified as LEED buildings. And it has adopted a heat action plan, actually one of the better plans in the nation. And it's received a grant, thousands of dollars grant to study energy efficiency in the county buildings. They're just completing the audits right now of a lot of those buildings. And I want to talk about something else that it's been doing. This month, it acted on its promise last year to begin to put attention to climate change in its annual budgeting so that there would be resources for implementing whatever plan they would come up with. In 2025, just last fall in October and then into November, the 5 commissioners, all Democrats, convened a climate change retreat where they went off campus to the new Ag Center and spent 2 days listening to national and state experts on climate change, the impacts to the county, and what are some of the best practices of other counties and cities in North Carolina where they've adopted what are called climate action plans. Uh, and this month, earlier this month, at its commissioners' meeting, they actually received a full-blown report of what such a climate action plan might contain. I'll show you that in just a moment. But importantly, they've now agreed, as of last week, to move ahead to implement that plan by issuing an RFP, a request for proposal for a consultant to come in, someone that's worked in developing climate action plans for other counties, to be able to develop the operational details of such a plan. So what does the plan address? Well, it has 8 sectors: climate smart agriculture, which is helping, it would help promote and to help subsidize the ability of farmers, first of all, to retain their lands, to get better access to funding, especially for new farmers coming out, and also to model best practices for sequestration. There are soil amendments that can be added to the soil instead of those used for nitrogen that actually absorb CO2 in the ground. That's just one example. The built environment, it really is referring to energy and energy efficiency, and not only in county buildings, but we're now working with Central Pines Regional Council that does planning for about 5 counties in the Piedmont area. They are bringing online this year what's called Electrify the Triangle. It's based on their work they've done with Buncombe County and Asheville. And what it does is to create an online marketplace for residents of the county, homeowners, apartment renters, landlords, where they can find free energy audits for their home, recommendations of how they can make their homes more energy efficient, including appliances, insulation, and access to green banking where they can get low interest loans in order to be able to afford the upgrade of perhaps of those appliances or better insulation. That's going to be adopted by Chatham County when that's ready to go in the next few months, I'm hoping. And that will expand the built environment to include all of the structures in the county, not just county buildings. Transportation is the big challenge. Transportation is one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions in this county. The county is doing what it can in terms of a commitment to expand its vehicular fleet to electric vehicles, to EVs. It's expanding the number of charging stations that are available for the general public and others. We've called upon them in this climate action plan that's being proposed to increase the bus routes, to make bus ridership free and available, and to move some of the routes into more rural areas as well, to bring them into work areas such as Pittsboro and Chapel Hill and so forth. Natural ecosystems, we're really talking about preservation of ecosystems in the face of the rapid development of this county. Land use planning is key to that as well. Waste and water management can play a role as well in terms of diverting more paper, food. There are other items that often go into our landfills, even with high volumes. And so there are proposals for ways to be able to divert more and avoid that. Community resiliency is talking about planning. And we got a good taste of that after several hurricanes that hit this area with the flooding, the impact on a lot of the rural roads around this county. And it's calling for comprehensive community-based and community involvement with this planning for critical infrastructure, resiliency HUDs. Give you one example of how this can work. Maricopa County in Arizona, one of the hottest counties in the United States, installed cooling centers, hydration stations, and reach out to vulnerable people living on the street when hot weather was approaching, and they reduced the visits to the ER room by 40% as a result of that kind of resiliency planning. Chatham can do that as well. And the big one underlying all of these is a richer sense, a more robust sense of public partner relationships and community engagement. The ability of the county to work with businesses is not such a hard lift as you might think, because businesses that are in the community, in the county, have as their prime motivation often. One of our consultants who's worked internationally with this, who's on our committee, our advisory committee, has said their biggest concern is building or enhancing their reputational value in the community. And one of the ways they do that is they are welcoming proposals where they can enter into partnership, everything from helping to build trails and parks to sharing energy audits with the county and committing their own operations to greater efficiency standards. So we think a lot can be done, and we think community engagement's important for each of these other sectors as well, as the county is working with the consultant to develop this climate action plan, to be able to educate citizens, bring their concerns to the planning, and then as it's being implemented, involve them in such things as community grants. Chapel Hill and Orange County have instituted these kinds of climate action grants to community organizations, nonprofits, faith organizations, small businesses that involve them as agents of change. And so we're thinking in a very robust way about what we can do beyond just the particular one-offs of the items I listed just a moment ago. So that's a quick 25-minute overview of how climate change is nevertheless impacting our state and particularly our county, and what the state and Chatham County are doing, what they're planning to do in response to all of that. So let me see if you've got any questions or comments or anything I can help or expand some of these slides that I just put up.
Right. Just a reminder, if you'll start typing questions or comments into the chat, I will read them out. But I have one based on what you said. The school system is reluctant to use or purchase electric school buses. What's the basis of that reluctance?
We've worked for 2 years talking, well, my advisory committee has worked for 2 years with the uh, officials with the county school system. They are a bit of old school, no pun intended. Uh, they think the rural routes in our county make it inadvisable to use electric vehicles. On the other hand, Cherokee County in the western part of the state has been a lead in adopting electric school buses, multiple school buses. Other counties, our neighboring county, Alamance, has adopted EV school buses. They're concerned about the maintenance, the cost, and such. But one of our advisory committee members is John Bonitz, who's also a commissioner for the town of Pittsboro. He works at NC State with the Clean Tech Institute. He's been all over the federal grants for clean school buses, EV school buses, and has offered to help the county secure these grants to make the transition. So we think it is very feasible. We haven't given up on this, and that's one of the reasons we recommended attention to this in the proposed climate action plan that our committee put forth to the commissioners. They seem to be going forward with this with the RFP that they've just put out for a consultant.
So you said it's because there are a lot of rural roads, and which made me think they think they're gonna, end up in puddles and get wet or something, but that's not it. It's that there's so many roads in the county and buses go so long. Is that the
Yeah,
reason?
that they're concerned about what's called range anxiety, that they would run out of battery uh, by the time they do one of their routes. But the other rural counties that have adopted EV school buses have shown that's not a concern. You simply plan your routes You have recharging stations, and you operate a system as before. You have to gas these buses anyway under the old system.
Okay. Um, there's some questions coming in. Is there any I mean, do you think that advocacy on the part of all these people who are listening to this would be potentially effective, or would it just be annoying and ineffective
For
in
the
terms of
school
talking?
system, for the school
Yeah.
system you're talking about?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Raise questions to the school board. Uh,
Okay, good. I'm making a note of that. Our peeps are listening. Let's see. First question. What about developers like Chatham Park? Are they implementing these climate change measures in their building of individual homes?
Not necessarily. The town of Pittsburgh has been the lead agency in working with Chatham Park when it was first applying for permits and such. And it's been a struggle for the town. Chatham Park is doing some things well. It is not anywhere near the standards that we would hope for them. Uh, but they are continuing to develop pretty rapidly, and even Disney now, as you know, has about 500 acres they're planning to build on.
Okay. Different question. I know that a large part of our greenhouse gas usage is from transportation. Short of encouraging carpooling, what can we do to reduce this? Why hasn't Chatham Park created more employment centers which could reduce the travel to adjoining counties?
Oh, on that last question, I have no idea, but the advocacy efforts could also be talking with the office down in Pittsburgh that is the outlet for Chatham Park. Why aren't they doing that? And transportation, as I said, is the big challenge. But we have a major artery running right through the county with 64. And that is the tailpipe emissions are really difficult for the county to, they have no agency over the individual cars, and there are hundreds of thousands of them, millions over the year and more. Uh, what we can do is, first of all, get our own house in order with the county's vehicles, with the infrastructure available for others, for residents in the county to be able to find charging stations, to set a model, to provide the education. But the other avenue really is what we've recommended in our proposed climate action plan, and that is to expand the bus routes for Chatham Transit, which is a bit of a quasi-agency within the county. The county doesn't directly control it. Uh, the expanded routes give you the opportunity to uh, avoid the use of driving in to workplaces, either to campus, the hospitals in Chapel Hill, to Galloway Ridge, to the other CCRCs in the area. We bring a lot of employees from Siler City, from Sanford, from other outlying areas into this quadrant in the county. And expanded more buses, expanded routes, free ridership is about the best the county can do right now in terms of expanding its reach just beyond county vehicles.
I'm taking notes. Okay, let's see. Is there support in adopting building ordinances so that if a home is damaged, whoops, low interest loans or more affordable insurance? The questions are coming so fast there. Let's see. Is there support of adopting building ordinances so that if a home is damaged, low interest loans or more affordable insurance is available and incentivized for a homeowner?
That's starting to get a little beyond my area of expertise in terms of the financing of that. What we've worked on that's related somewhat to this, first of all, with the recent Inflation Reduction Act, the RA, until a lot of it was deleted by our current president, we were working to get more funding into the state for the nonprofit groups that do weatherizing, that try to increase the energy efficiency, particularly of low-income homes. There's something called the a climate fee that a lot of homeowners pay because of the combined cost of their electricity, their rent, and because of the high electricity in poorly insulated homes, they're paying a higher climate fee. And so we're trying to come at the angle that way to improve the housing stock for greater climate efficiency and lower utility bills as a result.
Could you talk a little bit about the supply and quality of water in our area?
Actually, our area is better off than some in the States. We do not have an acute water shortage, but we are experiencing the less rainfall overall. There are still the periods of droughts that affect this county. If you go back to the climate drought map that the state has, you'll see that Chatham County is right in the middle of the state, which has the 32 counties that are in severe drought. So we do experience drought, but it's not acute water shortage yet.
Uh, okay, that's the supply and the quality issues get answered in, I think, other venues about, well, but you might want to talk about sort of the pollution and PFAS and the stuff that comes down from the north.
No, my committee's not really working with that, though there is another advisory committee for the county called the Environmental Review Committee, ERAC, and it is working on chemical issues, water, and so forth.
Okay, and all of the commissions or committees or whatever can be found on the website,
Yes,
the
yes.
county's website. Okay, does North Carolina have the geology for geothermal? I understand that certain areas are conducive to geothermal.
Chatham County is conducive to it. Geothermal is quite possible. And in fact, we're already doing it. As is Orange County. They have geothermal in a number of their county buildings.
Okay, and then you sort of made this point for school buses, they could go shorter routes with more buses, which you're saying if they have more buses. Okay.
That would be one alternative, yeah.
Transportation is a difficulty nationwide. For example, what has California done on this front that might be useful to emulate?
I'm not immediately acquainted with California's transportation plan. I know that their website is monitored by Japan because they view it as one of the lead or best examples of climate planning. They've had some difficulty planning with their transit system that they had proposed for reaching, I think it was from San Francisco to LA. Uh, there have been active planning. I'm not current on where the status is.
Okay, let's see about range anxiety. Okay, that's a definite concern for anyone considering purchasing an EV. What is the county doing in the way of adding more charging stations for public use? Seems expanding charging station network has been much slower than was predicted and promised a few years ago.
Well, it is dependent upon grant sources. The county's been fairly good at a continuing supply of those. It has a charging map that's available through the county website of the location of these charging stations. There are more being planned, but that is one of the big proposals in this climate action plan for the county that they've been given to accelerate that planning because it is still less than what had been promised a couple of years ago. But I want to say one other thing about range anxiety. The quality of batteries has just mushroomed in terms of the mileage that can be attained. It's well over 100 miles for most of them now. Some of them, Tesla and one or two of the others, are really pushing that envelope even more. And so we're getting into the area where the difference between a full tank of gas and a single charge is diminishing. Uh, the efficiency and cost of solar panels has just outstripped the cost of traditional fossil fuels in terms of lower the prices, developing greater efficiency. The same thing's happening with battery. And battery storage also enables solar energy to succeed even more because you can keep the electricity that's been generated on cloudy days and continue to feed that into the system.
And somebody wrote in and said it's up to 350 to 400 for some batteries.
Yes.
Okay. Um, let's see, different person, known to you. Chatham County has the highest per capita rate of EV ownership in the state. This is Vicki Atkinson. We need to keep that up and do more
Indeed.
EV ownership. Okay. Let's see, are there regional plans and policies that we are or could become involved in to get a bigger bang for 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 our tax dollars or other incentives, regional plans or policies?
Well, in working with Central Pines Regional Council, we're doing precisely that. In fact, we're taking advantage of the uh, model that's been set by Buncombe County. I mentioned a moment ago with the new proposal to electrify the triangle. That's a proposal that is not only affecting Chatham, but using the resources through the Central Pines. Uh, the 5 counties have the access to this online marketplace for energy efficiency, green bank funding, and so forth. I think that's an excellent suggestion.
Let's see. Given the current federal rollback in many climate areas, are you optimistic or pessimistic about North Carolina's chances of reaching our goals here?
Uh, well, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm an optimist, and Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, I worry a bit. So it's both. Chatham actually has received Inflation Reduction Act grants for a number of its clean energy projects, including the solar panels it's placed on buildings like the new Ag Center. Not all of the money has been disappeared. A lot of the money was in the pipeline. A lot of it was still coming through, but the impact of the president's actions, it nevertheless has been significant.
Right, the big beautiful bill,
Yeah.
big ugly bill. Okay. Let's see. There was a great Solarize the Triangle program about 2 to 3 years ago for solar panel installation. Maybe consider a similar incentive program for charging stations.
Oh, interesting. I had not thought of that angle. I know that we're using the Solarize the Triangle as a precedent for Electrify the Triangle, the program I had talked about. But for charging stations, I had not thought about that. So thank you to whomever suggested that.
Okay, other questions? You've got a minute or so to think of some question and type it in. Um, I had one other that is not Chatham centric, but I saw the news today that Trump has now withdrawn the US from the Paris Accord for the second time. Like he didn't leave fully enough before. Do you have any wisdom about the Paris Accord on the national basis?
2015, that was a precedent-setting international climate conference that President Obama helped to engineer. What you have to do to leave it is you have to give notice. And then after a certain period of time, it becomes official. And so Trump was simply trumpeting the final, uh, departure.
Okay, I thought he forgot that he had done it already. Let's see. Here we go. Do you anticipate that the many refueling convenience markets would see commercial promise in adding charging stations while still offering gas pumps?
Actually, some businesses are already doing it. There are charging stations in Brower Chapel outside of the pizza restaurant across the street from Breakaway Cafe. That's a great idea. Of course, it's an incentive for businesses, and I think increasingly it will be recognized.
How important is composting to reduce greenhouse gas emissions?
Well, it's one of the elements. I think it was Al Gore who once said that you won't solve climate change with a silver bullet, a single approach, but rather a buckshot. And he meant, multiple thousands of individual actions are vital. And composting is certainly one of the pillars of that.
How widespread is that availability in Chatham? Do you know? I know it's a big deal in Farrington, but are you aware of other places that people can bring their composting?
Uh, I think the Chatham County's Waste and Recycling Department has plans for that and has a couple of pilot projects underway right now. But Vicki Atkinson, who's on this call, I think knows a little more about that.
Okay, we'll see what she writes in. I'm also Sherry DeRosa, who's also on this call. Can between the two of them, they can be a source of some kind of reference that we can put in the email to the people who've been watching tonight and to all of the Democratic Club members. Let's see. Okay. Not just affecting Chatham County, but do you foresee a future for light rail across the state?
Oh my, 20, 30 years ago when the planning was underway, we had such high hopes for that. I'm more and more discouraged about whether it's going to occur. By the way, Vicky just showed in the chat session that there are 4 pilot projects for composting that the county is
Okay.
showcasing at some of its collection centers.
Excellent. Okay. Let's see. Bank of America has Charlotte as its HOE. Okay. Shouldn't have read that. Are they involved in climate finance for their own interest?
I, it, the bank has made Charlotte as its home base, I believe she meant.
Oh, I thought it was like a rude thing. Home base. All
And I
right.
no, but I don't know what they're doing in terms of their incentives.
Okay. Sherry's asking everybody, do you compost? Somebody said, great program. Chatham County is doing a pilot program now. We have that under in 4 collection centers. Okay. And I think we are about ready to close down. I'm going to give 30 seconds. Oh, somebody's typing. I think the anxiety is around being out in rural areas with scarcity of chargers. Who could be incentivized in rural areas to install charges?
I think that's a great research project for the county. I do not know, but that's a clear problem that's identified. I think the only initiative that we've been able to identify is to expand the bus routes of ridership in some of those rural areas.
Well, somebody on this call might have an entrepreneur in their family who could think about how to financially incentivize this. Let's see. Not going to do that one. The compost pilots are going really well. Um, okay, I think we should close this down. This was strikingly comprehensible for some really complicated statistics and scientific data. So that's really great. And we are going to try to pull together as many recommendations as we can. Yep, a UNC Duke student maybe is another suggestion. So we really appreciate your service to our Chatham County community and to the whole world because we're connected to the whole world.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Vicky. I appreciate it. I'm sure I know a number of the people that are tuned in.
That's right. These are your people. Oh, you got a clap. And let's see, we will be posting the recording within the next day or two on our website, which is farringtondems.org. And so thank you to our participants and have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone.